Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. I am Elaine Chang from TerraWorks. I'm the Director of Market Development and Customer Success here. And we have a great topic today. So we at TerraWorks talk to many organizations that need to track their field staff's activities, which are mostly conducted offline. And so today, we're excited to have Soil Haiti to share how they're doing all of that, so tracking their field staff's activities. Just a little bit of background on who they are. Their mission is to provide access to safe and dignified sanitation to produce rich organic compost that can be used for Haiti's soils, while also creating economic opportunities in local communities. So Soil has provided over 1,000 of the EkoLakay compost toilets throughout Haiti and is growing. So we're joined today by two folks at Soil. Erica Lloyd is she's the systems director, and she'll be giving an overview of Soil's work and how the field staff have adopted it and are using it. And by the way, we also highlighted how Soil did their field staff training in a blog. So if you're interested in how to encourage field staff adoption, I encourage you to check that out on our website in the blog section. We're also joined by Shannon Smith, who's the sales and marketing advisor, who will be sharing how the management is looking at reports in Salesforce and using data to make decisions. So before I hand it over, let me just go over some housekeeping rules. Everybody is on mute by default, so if you need to ask a question, please type it into either the questions or the chat window. Let's see, the event is being recorded. And in terms of the questions, we'll take questions at the end. However, if you need a clarification question throughout, type it in and I will moderate that. So I think that's it. With that, let me hand it over to Erica.
All right. Thanks, Elaine. And hi there, everyone. Good morning. Can everyone, Elaine, can you see my screen?
I can see your screen. I can hear you well.
Great. Okay. Well, as Elaine said, my name is Erica Lloyd, and I am Soil's Systems Director. And today I am joined by Shannon Smith. Shannon, you want to say hi?
Hi, everyone.
And we today are going to talk about telephones for toilets, how we are using TerraWorks and Salesforce to scale our sanitation service. So I would like to start by just giving a quick overview of Soil's service, which is called EkoLakay, as Elaine mentioned, and just to help you understand the context in which we're using TerraWorks. Our service is built on principles of ecological sanitation, which involves transforming waste collected in waterless toilets and transforming it to produce compost. Soil builds toilets with removable buckets that contain the waste, and you can see that there at the top of our diagram. And then moving to the right, each week those containers are collected by Soil staff, transported to our treatment site, emptied of their contents, and then cleaned and sanitized before being returned to the household. And that waste, as I mentioned, is thoroughly treated to ensure safe use and transformed into agriculture-grade compost. We are currently developing the EkoLakay service in Haiti's two largest cities, the capital of Port-au-Prince and the northern city of Cap-Haïtien. And as Elaine mentioned, we do have a current customer base of about 1,000 families. So as you can see, we have a long way to scale. And running our service generates a lot of data. We tracking everything from monthly subscription fees to customer complaints. And prior to using TerraWorks, all of that data was collected with pen and paper, and then usually eventually entered into Excel spreadsheets. which worked pretty well when we had about 100 customers. But by the time we had scaled to 500 customers, it was clear that our ability to scale further was limited in part by our lack of an integrated, flexible, mobile data management system. So one problem with pen and paper is that obviously there was considerable lag time in getting data entered, meaning that the most up-to-date information wasn't always available to our agents in the field who were interacting with customers, nor was it available to our management who need that data to analyze as we try and refine our service model to move towards financial sustainability. So that was one big issue. And then also none of our data was interconnected. We had all of these separate spreadsheets. And so it was challenging and time-consuming to evaluate different kinds of information, look for relationships or correlations, because, for example, payment information was in a different spreadsheet than complete information. And so it was really challenging to see, you know, were there relationships there? Just to give you an idea of how our team is structured and how important it is that information be readily available to everyone who needs it. This is an organogram of our EkoLakay team. So we have two operational teams, the green on the left and the yellow on the right, and they each consisting of a coordinator, a depot manager, a payment collector, and 3 to 4 bucket collectors. And together, these teams manage a group of neighborhoods. And then our program director, our advisors, the receptionist, and the technical supervisor, they support both teams. In this diagram, everybody who's got a blue border around their box is already using TerraWorks or Salesforce to collect, view, and or analyze data. And those with the red boxes will be added in the next year or so. So you can see that TerraWorks and Salesforce have really become an integral part of Soil being able to provide the EkoLakay service. There were, oh, I lost a slide. There we go. There were two really compelling features that led us to TerraWorks. First, there are dozens of offline data collection apps out there, but TerraWorks allows us to also view data even when you're offline, which is really important because we still do have, you know, limited connectivity in the field. And so TerraWorks means that one of our payment collectors, so Wilford here, pictured in the center, this was during our field training with TerraWorks, he has all the information he needs about a customer's payment history at his fingertips. So that was one really important feature for us. Secondly, TerraWorks leverages the power of Salesforce, which Soil had already been using for several years in other ways for our donor management for our organization. So we knew that the ability to customize and analyze with Salesforce was really powerful. I do just want to offer one kind of tip from our learning experience, is that it is really important to put in the upfront investment in helping your team learn the tools and the technology. Some of our users were completely new to smartphones in general. So we spent a lot of time just getting people comfortable with the phones, and then doing a lot of practice in TerraWorks before we let them loose in the field. But that investment has really paid off, and it's been really exciting to see the way our team has fully embraced TerraWorks and Salesforce. In the beginning, I was doing all of the brainstorming for the jobs that we needed to develop, doing all of the backend setup in Salesforce, and then training our staff and advisors. And now we're seeing really broad ownership. So Shannon, for example, has taken on a lot of the development of new jobs in TerraWorks, as well as setting up reports and dashboards. And really, our whole team is identifying new jobs that they want in TerraWorks. We joke a little bit that we've created a monster because now that our employees have seen what TerraWorks and Salesforce can do, they really want to leverage the power of mobile data more and more in providing the EkoLakay service. So we now use TerraWorks to manage all of our customer service and sales processes, from tracking prospects at the interest stage, to signing a contract, to managing customer accounts, gathering and responding to complaints and maintenance requests, satisfaction surveys, and collecting payments. All of those things, these jobs that you see listed here are just about half of the jobs that we're using now on a daily basis to manage the service. And in the next year, we'll be developing some additional jobs to improve our logistics, including tracking the movement of the buckets and managing our toilet inventory. So that is a quick overview of how we're using TerraWorks. And now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Shannon to talk a bit about the impact that it's had on soil and on providing the EkoLakay service.
Thanks, Erica. So yeah, I'm Shannon Smith again, and I'm the Soil Marketing and Sales Advisor. And in my job, I support the EkoLakay Program Director in creating marketing and overall business strategies, as well as analyzing relevant data. So initially, as Erica said, I didn't set up the back end of TerraWorks and Salesforce at all, and I was actually really intimidated by it. But as I started learning it for my job, I quickly saw how powerful it would be. So now I really love it, and I do a bit of the back end work as well as just generating tons of reports. So I've fallen in love with TerraWorks for how it allows us to gather more data without added hassle, then analyze that data almost in real time and act on that information more quickly than before. And that it should be the whole point of data collection, right, is to help make decisions and then act on them. So TerraWorks allows our sales agents to collect data in the field more easily because, first of all, mobile data collection is just more fun and professional than fumbling around with papers in the field. And this has led to more and more consistent data coming into our system. And this improved data collection is also thanks to features in TerraWorks like being able to make questions obligatory to answer in the different surveys that we use. So some examples of additional data we've been able to collect is marketing data. We're now taking note of more demographic data and customers' preferences than we were before. And along with conversion rates, this allows us to see which marketing strategies are going to work for different demographics. We use special offers in our marketing strategy to attract new clients, often by offering our current clients a prize for referring a friend to the service. And we've seen that residents of some neighborhoods preferred hygiene products over cash prizes as referral offers, and so we've continued offering hygiene products in those areas. We've also seen that if the special offers are time limited, like very short offers such as a weekend special, it's going to be more effective than, say, a more elaborate one-month offer. And that's totally context-based, but it just goes to show that we really use this data that we're collecting to look at what's working and refine our strategy. So that's an example of what kinds of data we're interested in from a marketing perspective. And now I'm going to get a little bit more into the how we're analyzing this data. So in this slide, you can see an example of a dashboard we've set up in Salesforce using data collected with TerraWorks. Whether it's the program director, country directors, or board members, the dashboards can be a very helpful way to get an idea of the program's progression over time. So in this slide,
Sharon?
Yeah?
We've got some weird feedback on your sound, so it was a bit hard to understand you.
Okay. Um,
Oh, that's a bit of a buzz.
Yeah.
is it any better now? Is it better now?
Ooh.
Yes,
Oh,
that's better.
now it's good. Great.
Okay. Sorry about that. So in this slide, you can see an example of a dashboard we've set up in Salesforce using data collected with TerraWorks. And so the program director, country directors, and board members can look at this and just get an overall snapshot of the progression of the program over time. And these graphs, as you can see, are mostly in Haitian Creole, but I'll walk us through them. So the first graph in the top left shows our total number of household toilet customers over time separated out by neighborhoods. And you can see that the dip in total customers towards the end is due to that bottom pink segment significantly decreasing. And if you jump diagonally to the bottom right, we have the number of toilets removed per month, again, separated out by neighborhoods. And again, you can see that that pink segment had significant uninstallations starting in the month of March. So then, in this case, we knew that was due to an external subsidy ending, but in some cases, we may not know the cause of fluctuations, and so we need to do some digger deeping to get to the bottom of it. Okay, so going up to the top right graph, you can see our new installations over time, and the blue line there is to show the monthly minimum objective, and that comes from our annual strategy. And some months were far over the objective, and some months were far under. But it's helpful to have these clear and simple visual representations so that the program director can follow up with his operational team to see what is causing these fluctuations from month to month. And while not pictured on this dashboard, we also have reports that track various field agents' results, whether it be in payment collection or converting leads into customers. So being able to see field agents' performance is really invaluable, and it's what Salesforce is really good at. And finally, if you look at the bottom left graph, it shows our customers' payment methods. Some pay by cash with our payment collectors going door to door, or they can come to the office, or they can pay by a mobile payment service. And we're currently trying to convert more customers to pay with a mobile payment service, which is that last and very smallest bar on the graph. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. So those are graphs that we might look at on a monthly basis or twice a month, but when we're working on particular problems or campaigns or doing research, we're constantly adding things to TerraWorks surveys, tweaking our old surveys, and then my favorite part, analyzing the data. So let's look at that example of mobile payments to get an example of a time I might look at the reports more frequently. We saw that not many customers pay via the mobile payment service that's available. And trying to convince these customers to dive into a new payment method that they're totally unfamiliar with has been tough. But as Erica talked about, our team has been leveraging the power of TerraWorks and Salesforce to track conversion rates. This time not to sign up for the household toilet service, but for existing customers to sign up for the mobile payment service. And it was actually the team who suggested this TerraWorks job, whereas before many of us would have tried to avoid data collection like the plague. So it's a real testament. So now we can look at conversion rates to mobile payments and cross-compare that with the neighborhood where our customers live, the field agent that spoke with them about mobile payments, that customer's past payment rates, and so forth. So we can also pinpoint in on a specific group that we want to target. Say people who have a certain type of cell phone service and they're already signed up for the mobile payment service, but they haven't started paying for our service, EkoLakay, with that mobile payment service. So we look at this kind of data at least every week, if not more frequently, as we work to refine our strategy and gain more insight into what's actually working. So yeah, like I said, this is really a testament to how TerraWorks is helping us all to stay organized, whereas before, data collection and management just felt like a burden for everyone involved. And another example of when we might be looking at data in Salesforce on a very frequent basis is during our special offers, like I mentioned before. We're still very much in the research phase of figuring out what is the most effective approach to marketing. And so frequently checking in using Salesforce reports with the data collected in TerraWorks is helpful to make sure that there are no hiccups along the way that would skew results, such as distribution challenges or other surprises along the way. And our favorite part, one of my favorite parts about TerraWorks and Salesforce is that it affords this integrated, flexible, and customizable reporting. The ease with which you can generate reports in Salesforce allows for really streamlined program management, as the program director can immediately see the effects of various interventions or campaigns, as well as really closely track his team's efficiency and results. So he's learning more about generating those reports in Salesforce now, but at the time being, he's really frequently asking me to generate different kinds of reports to analyze what's happening in the field. An example of this is how our program director analyzed the results of our recent satisfaction survey. So he was curious to look at where dissatisfied clients live and look at other factors like how they signed up, who their service representative is, just to see if there were any correlations that could help us understand this dissatisfaction. And he did find some correlations in the sales agents and was able to follow up with them directly and resolve some specific problems in the sales process. And it's having this database that connects all of our information that we have about our customers that really allows for this type of rich analysis. And then I'm going to give one last example. We've just recently started to track our Net Promoter Score since switching to TerraWorks. For those of you who might not be aware of Net Promoter Score, it's a simple 1 to 2 question survey that asks, typically, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely is it that you would recommend our service to a friend or family member? That's the generic kind of phrasing. Although we actually use a 1 to 5 scale because our customers are more accustomed to a 1 to 5 scale. So people who respond with a 5 are considered promoters, and they're weighed against the detractors, who are 1 to 3. And then 4s are considered passives. So asking this simple question uncovers customer satisfaction and loyalty, and it's an effective way that we can track satisfaction really easily over time and against different factors like price increases or operational changes. But it would have been way too difficult to capture this data with our old Excel-based system. And with the TerraWorks scoring option, we can really easily get a snapshot of general customer satisfaction. And then that can help us to choose a moment of really high customer satisfaction to make an operational change that may temporarily decrease overall satisfaction, like a price increase. So that was my last example, and I think some of you may have some questions, so I'm going to hand this over to Elaine.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Shannon. Thanks, Erica. Super interesting. Just a reminder, feel free to type your question into the question section, or you can raise your hand and I can unmute you and you can ask your question to them live. We do have a couple questions that have trickled in from Teresa Walter. How are you able to pull a customer profile up when the field staff is online? Do you have to pull the data onto the phones before going into the field? Will you talk about that process?
Sure. So what TerraWorks does is it syncs with all of the data that's in Salesforce, and you identify for each user what kind of information you want to have available in each TerraWorks job. So that can be identifying certain customers, or in our case, it's normally by certain neighborhoods. And so every time the phone syncs, it's pushing any data that is on the phone to the Salesforce database, and then any new information on the Salesforce database that's relevant for the user, it's pushing that onto the phone. And so even when you're offline, that data that you've directed there is available there on the phone. And so, like I said, it's made it possible for us to identify, what are the critical pieces of information for each user to have when he or she is out interacting with a customer, and then we can make sure that information is available to them through the syncing process. So it's really easy. It's just a matter of the initial setup.
Great, and I think a sort of a related question also from Teresa, can you talk a little bit about the kind of permissions and sharing restrictions that you've set up in Salesforce and TerraWorks? So like, is it only the field staff in a certain region are able to see theirs? I think that's your question, Teresa. Chat me back if you had something else in mind, but maybe in the meantime, Erica or Shannon, can you talk about that?
Sure. So back to kind of these operational teams. So for example, the people in kind of the yellow operational team 2, those people only have access to customers who are in the neighborhoods that they manage. So they're not seeing any of the customer information for the green operational team. Whereas someone like the director or an advisor may have access to view data for all customers, but perhaps don't have the power to edit records or things like that. So there are kind of permissions that you set both for the TerraWorks field user in terms of what data he or she can access and collect out in the field, and then also for anybody who's using Salesforce in the back end to look at all of this, analysis and the dashboards and reports, like those gorgeous ones Shannon showed us. You can also set permissions for those people. So for example, our director has the permission to be able to create new reports, whereas the receptionist can only view reports. She does not have the power to create new ones. So all of those things are kind of customizable with the different roles available in the system.
Great. Question from Rachel McManus. Do you use TerraWorks for ongoing case management, i.e. agent opens a customer ticket that the agent or another agent can follow up on?
We do, yeah. Shannon, actually, do you want to talk a little bit about kind of our maintenance processes, or complaints and satisfaction, all that stuff?
Yeah, so there's definitely a way of sharing information where the result of one survey is going to create a job that's necessary for another user. So if if the receptionist was talking to a client on the phone and that client had a complaint, then she could enter that as a complaint job, and one of the coordinators that you see would follow up. Depending on which block, one of those coordinators would follow up appropriately. Likewise, there's the case in which someone is overdue for their payment for, say, a month. In that case, it's going to be the payment collectors who follow up with those people. But if there gets to be a larger amount of debt, 3-4 months, then the coordinator would take that on. And so it's the result of one survey that's going to share that information necessary for the whole team to be kind of like interconnectedly working on the service.
Great.
Yeah, and I'll just add that tracking kind of maintenance requests has, when we were kind of pen and paper and Excel, and getting those requests responded to in a timely way was very inconsistent. Like, we had problems that would be resolved same day, and then we would have people who were waiting like 3 weeks to get their toilet repaired, which if you've ever had a problem with your toilet, you don't want to be waiting 3 weeks, and we definitely don't want our customers waiting 3 weeks. And so one of the impacts that we've seen with TerraWorks, one of the very kind of concrete improvements in our service is we've been able to drastically reduce the response time to maintenance requests.
That's great. Sort of a related question there from Laura Stupin. Does TerraWorks have a way of capturing phone calls from interested users that can then be follow up on? So let me take the first stab at that. There's no direct way in TerraWorks, but I think using the Salesforce system, you could include specific, or there's like a case management tool that you can use that way. Just curious, Erica and Shannon, if there's, if you've thought of other ways to incorporate phone calls into your system.
So the way that we do it is actually through this. I was going to try and like pull up BlueStacks and show you the job, but it might take a couple minutes, and so I'll just this first job that we have, the Nouveau Moun Intéressé, is the job that we use to record interactions with people who are interested in the service, and so that's kind of registering a person as a lead. And again, it doesn't actually kind of connect the phone call, but our receptionist or whoever it is who speaks with this person just enters the information quickly in, and then that gets the person into our system. And then job number 2, the Relais Moun Intéressé, are any kind of follow-up contacts that we have with that person. So if someone says, hey, I would really love to get an EkoLakay toilet in my home, we ask them a couple questions. You know, do you have a kind of 2-foot square space where we can put the toilet? Do you have the first month's subscription fee ready to pay? You know, all of those kind of questions. And many times people will say, oh, okay, yeah, no, I'm going to need a couple days to get all that stuff together. And so we'll have some follow-up calls until the point that they're ready to sign the contract and install the toilet. And so we can record all of those things through these jobs. Well, I should say I made an interesting choice in setting up Salesforce. Salesforce has tons of setup to do exactly this kind of thing, to kind of put in new leads, to track your contacts with those leads. Because we were already using Salesforce to do that with kind of our donors and organizational partners, and because I am self-taught on Salesforce, I was paralyzed by fear that I was going to break something that like our development director needed. So I set up all custom objects and just kind of mimicked the Salesforce processes for doing these things. But if you have more confidence and trust in Salesforce than I did when I was starting out, all of these things are very, very easy to do with kind of the existing Salesforce infrastructure.
Great. A question about sort of the business model. Are costs related to the system setup, so costs around the mobile phones, TerraWorks, phone credits, are these coming purely from funding, or is it partially covered by the customers?
So we're still working on trying to reach financial sustainability. So our customer, the monthly subscription fee is not yet covering all of the costs of the service. And we do know, I mean, TerraWorks, you know, obviously has a subscription fee. If we decide that at some point that becomes cost prohibitive, then we would look at something else. But in the meantime, it has been like immeasurably useful, because what I thought we needed our mobile data collection to do is actually only a tiny fraction now that we've started using it. You know, we started out with these 5 jobs, and we thought, great, this will like meet all of our needs. And now we're up to, I don't know, 12 or 15 and growing. And so it has been, I would say, for anyone who's thinking, oh, you know, we just really want to build our own mobile app and database, Soil almost went that route, and I'm so glad that we didn't, because I feel like we know so much more about what we want a system to do. So even if in the long term TerraWorks turns out not to be our 20-year solution to mobile data collection. For right now, it is the perfect tool for us. And I think really for anyone who's kind of just getting started in mobile data collection, it is really the ideal way to really learn and know and test what you think, you know, your mobile data collection needs are.
Well, that's great to hear. Thanks. Other questions about your use case? Can you talk a little bit about how the payments work? You mentioned that one of the jobs is collecting payments. How does that process work?
Sure. So customers pay a monthly fee for the service. So even though the buckets are collected on a weekly basis, customers only have to pay once a month. And that is an ongoing fee. And so right now, as Shannon mentioned, the vast majority of our customers are paying a door-to-door payment collector. So actually this photo, the gentleman there on the right is one of our payment collectors. And so he goes kind of to each one of our customers' houses and collects payment. And as you can imagine, that is time intensive and a pretty expensive way for us to be collecting our fee. And so as Shannon mentioned, we're working on this transition to mobile money because that will be a much more cost-effective way and much more efficient way for us to get customer payments and for customers to make those payments. Because then with mobile money, they can make the payment kind of whenever it's most convenient for them. And so that is a huge effort. And as Shannon mentioned, our program director actually asked to set up a job in TerraWorks. So Shannon designed a job in TerraWorks for the payment collectors and other field agents to talk to customers about the benefits of mobile money for them. And try and help register them to use mobile money right there on the spot. And I actually really pushed back against creating that job because my thought was, at the end of the day, we have the data about whether or not customers actually make payments with mobile money, and that's what we really care about. And the program director pushed back and said, look, if I'm going to be able to effectively manage my team, I need to know who is good at getting people signed up for the mobile payments, and to find out what are they doing well and how can they teach our other staff to be effective, and that was a really compelling argument to us. So we got that job set up.
And if I could add, in terms of some of the back end work with payments, I know it was tricky for Erica to set up all of the invoicing. It's kind of a complicated way that we've set it up in Salesforce, but now it's really easy to go in and to look at for each month and each invoice, did the customer pay and on what date, and just all the information that you would want to know. And then Erica's also worked on getting the mobile payment service integrated with Salesforce, which hasn't quite happened yet, but once the mobile service is ready, that will be able to happen, and so then that'll be an automatic process, whereas right now we upload that data every day.
Yeah, that's Shannon brings up a great point, which is just that Salesforce has the ability to integrate with so many other apps and things out there. So TerraWorks is just one of like a gazillion things that can integrate with Salesforce. And so yeah, so we're working on getting this integration with the mobile payment data, so that will just kind of enter automatically. But the Salesforce, it's called the App Exchange, and it there are really millions, probably at least thousands of other things that can integrate with Salesforce as well. So it's really neat to be able to make all these different kind of systems talk to each other, because it makes our processes so much more efficient.
Awesome. Another question from the audience is, do you use barcodes in any of your forms?
We do not, but that is my project for this coming year that I'm so excited about. I mentioned the bucket tracking, and Soil actually has kind of a little network of other organizations working on this kind of what we call container-based sanitation. These kind of toilets dry toilets where we collect the waste and turn it into compost or biogas or other kinds of byproducts. And one of the other organizations is doing some really neat things with barcodes in tracking their buckets. And so we are hoping to learn a bit from them and do some testing out in the coming months with getting all of our buckets barcoded. And so we can scan at the point of collection, and then we can scan when the truck driver picks them up, and then we can scan when they get delivered to the treatment site, which is going to be a really important tool for us because we're looking at sources of funding that would basically pay Soil for treating a certain amount of waste. And so being able to demonstrate in a very kind of clear, transparent way for the government or for a multinational funder or anyone who wants to kind of implement this kind of funding, to show them, we collected 100 buckets at the neighborhood, all those 100 buckets got delivered to the site, all of those 100 buckets got dumped and washed and sanitized, and all of those buckets made it back to the household. And being able to show that in just a very demonstrable way is going to be super important to our ability to scale. So we're really excited about it, but as of yet, we have not dabbled in the barcodes.
I think that'll be really exciting, Erica. And maybe next year we can have another follow-up webinar on how that went. Couple other, let's see. I have a few more questions, so if you have any last-minute questions, please type them in. One thing that Shannon, you said that popped out at me, you said that the field staff found this to be more fun than paper, and I think I was just taken aback because I think that's very rare to hear this adjective, fun, about kind of work. How do you think that you got people to think this way about using the tool? Like, what kind of adoption methods do you think have worked in getting them really pumped and really engaged in this whole process?
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of that was designed and done by Erica, but I can speak to it from someone who was kind of taken along the ride. I can say that myself and the other advisors we were very hesitant to accept this new data management system because we all had our own personal trackers and we kind of safeguarded our own data really well in Excel so that we always made sure at least we have access to the kind of data that we need to analyze. And so I think we were just nervous about learning the system and how do we access the data and how do we generate these reports. So I think that we were the worst out of anybody, but the operational team just really liked using the mobile phones because it looks cool and it looks professional and you're able to just have this one device in your pocket, in your hand, rather than fumbling around with all these papers. So I think that for people who are entering the data, it was a really attractive thing to be able to enter it on a mobile phone and take pictures. One of the things that they do during the installation process is to take a picture of the client. So now instead of having to have the pen and paper and the camera and the GPS coordinate machine, it's all just one. So for them, I think it was just very attractive. And then what got us all on board is the way that Erica did the trainings. So she made the trainings very straightforward and simple, and then followed up a lot with agents in the field. So people got a lot of one-on-one practice just to make sure they were comfortable. But the actual initial presentations and trainings themselves, they were not overwhelming. They were very straightforward. You know, Erica had clearly put that investment time into setting up the system well so that she had, you can say, Erica, after what that application is, but she had an application that showed what she was doing on her cell phone on the screen in front of the whole team. So I think just being able to see this technology come into fruition and be this system that really meets our needs, it was exciting for us all to see. And then we also did an exercise during one of the trainings where we had to go find an imaginary client. So they had set up GPS points around the office, and so we went out in teams and tried to find these imaginary clients, and then I think we found it was like a balloon with candy tied to it or something. So it was a really fun process. And then in the end, everyone got little certificates that said that they were certified in using TerraWorks. So that kind of solidified it and made people feel empowered to take this on. And I'm always available if people have questions. Erica's always available if people have questions or if there are any hiccups in the system. But luckily, she set it up really well, so there haven't been that many hiccups, which also really helps to get that trust that this is really working.
Yeah, I'll jump in and say the app that Shannon mentioned is called TeamViewer, and I would say 100%. Make sure that whatever piece of technology you buy, we ended up with Samsung phones, in part because the first phone I tested wasn't compatible with TeamViewer, and TeamViewer allows anyone to log in remotely to that piece of technology. So I can use my computer to connect with a field agent's telephone, so long as that agent has internet access at the time. To troubleshoot with them on the phone or in the office. And then as you can see here, I also used it during our training session so that the screen of the telephone was magnified so everybody could see my demonstration before they tried it themselves on the phone. And then, yeah, I think the other thing I would add, as Shannon kind of alluded to, is just like knowing your audience. So in Haitian culture, like certificates and kind of being certified and doing things is a big deal. And so we created like a TerraWorks certification process that included, you know, participating in these group trainings and then, you know, kind of a one-on-one field test. And then once people passed that test, then and only then did they become certified and have the opportunity to use the phones on their own in the field. And so that kind of just was appropriate to our audience. And, it, you know, if you took that kind of same strategy elsewhere, people may not, you know, give two hoots about a certificate. But like in Haiti, that's a big deal. And so yeah, so just trying to think about tailoring your training to the people that you're working with. And yeah, as Shannon said, people were just really excited to have the mobile phones. And actually, we started out the training with a conversation of like, what's broken in our current system? What is challenging about pen and paper and Excel? And I didn't have to say a word, right? People were just like, oh, and I have problems with this and this is, and so that really set the stage for like, here's the opportunity for us to resolve those problems. And so people really looked at it not as like, oh, here's this like new thing that I have to learn and take on, but like, oh, wow, yeah, this is going to solve a lot of problems for us. I was going to add one other thing, but now it slipped my mind. So I'll pipe back in if I think of it, but I'll pass it back to you now, Elaine.
Great. This is super helpful, and I've gotten some comments that people are going to copy these ideas, so thanks for sharing. Okay, and I think, let me just wrap this up. I think you have shown everyone that you guys have a really robust implementation. You guys are doing a wide variety of jobs. People are bought into this. Um, I'm wondering if you have any like lessons learned or like tips for other sanitation groups or other groups with field staff out there for how they can get like a similarly robust implementation. Or yeah, maybe just like any lessons learned or yeah, tips for the audience.
I will. I remembered what I was going to say, and this is a tip, which is, uh, as Shannon mentioned, people having trust in the system is hugely important. And that means test, 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 test to make sure that jobs are going to work the way you think they're going to work. We have kind of rolled out jobs in a couple of phases. And the first phase, I tested and just because I wanted to make sure that when people got in the field and started using it on their own, they wouldn't start having problems and then get flustered or frustrated. And then, that can really impact adoption, right? If people's kind of early experiences are filled with questions and frustration and uncertainty, that's really going to kind of impact in the long view how people feel about the system. So I was really scrupulous about testing for that first phase. And then the second phase, I was like, oh, I totally know what I'm doing. And there's just like these couple simple other jobs. And I did not test as rigorously. And we ended up having some problems. Unfortunately, like our staff was great and we were able to resolve them really quickly. But I imagined like, oh gosh, if that had happened at the beginning, it really could have set the tone or impacted the tone, I guess, in a really negative way. So now for this third phase, I was back on really rigorously testing things before I rolled them out. So that is definitely one lesson learned, is just the importance of really testing before you push jobs out to everyone. Shannon, do you have other thoughts on that subject? Or other tips?
I know we've said it several times, but one big tip is just being willing to put in that upfront investment in learning. Whoever's the person setting up the back end of things, I know it can be really intimidating. So just taking your time and being patient with yourself to set it up well is really important. And then I know we've used the TerraWorks guides and we've used the Salesforce support group, which makes it sound a little bit like therapy, which sometimes it is when you're dealing with issues on the back end of things. And so there are a lot of people who are willing to share tips on those groups and to reach out if you're really stuck. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. It's really like a learn as you go process, but if you set things up well and take the time to do that, everything's a lot easier.
Oh yeah, and what I would add on that front is, one of the things that I think is possibly a little more unique about the way that we are using TerraWorks is that, I think a lot of organizations use TerraWorks for kind of like one-shot needs, right? So like doing a health survey or, things like that, whereas we really are using it, in that kind of case management that I think Rachel asked about, in an ongoing way to manage our service. And so when we were doing this initial setup, I actually sat down with like sheets of paper and drew out, like in a very visual way, kind of like mapped our service. And so, it starts with somebody having contact with soil and saying, hey, I'm interested in EkoLakay, and who are the potential people that they could be talking to, and then who else needs that information for it to move from the prospect stage to signing the contract. And there were like boxes and arrows, and I was literally mapping all of these things out to get an idea of how we wanted to set things up in Salesforce, what kind of jobs we needed in TerraWorks. And again, we've ended up adding so much, but I think that taking the time to map that out at the beginning was really helpful in getting us a foundation that really responded to our service, rather than our service kind of needing to respond to what the app could do, if that makes sense. So that was a really useful kind of time well spent. And the TerraWorks team was really provided a lot of helpful feedback and insight into that process as well. So that was really great.
Great. I think with that we'll wrap up. I think this is just super exciting to see what you guys have done so far, and we look forward to seeing how else you use it in the future. So we'll be definitely keeping tabs and updating everyone. As kind of like a conclusion, Shannon had mentioned kind of using the Salesforce communities. TerraWorks also has our own communities, so some people have asked to be put in touch with Erica and Shannon, so I'm happy to do that. But you can also reach out to them and other TerraWorks users by going on and joining our Salesforce TerraWorks community. You can ask questions about to other users directly, so you don't have to hear it all from us. Yeah, so kind of ask your fellow users through that. I think with that, thank you so much, Erica and Shannon. This is just a great example of what you guys are doing, so keep up the good work, and thanks again.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Elaine. This was really fun to participate in this webinar.
Yeah, thanks everyone, and have a good day.
Great, thanks.